My name is Eddie R. Hennessy, and I am 29 years old. She stopped me at the door and whispered, "Don't talk to me tonight. You'll make me look bad." So, I didn't. For 3 hours, I stayed silent while he worked the room, laughed too hard, told stories I'd already heard, and pretended I wasn't there. Every glance he shot my way felt like a check, like he was making sure I stayed exactly where he'd put me. I gave him exactly what he asked for, nothing. For context, my boyfriend is 27. We've been together a little over 2 years, living together for 8 months. This happened last Saturday at his coworker's birthday party, and I'm still trying to figure out if I'm crazy or if this relationship had been quietly dying long before that night. We were walking up to the front door of his friend's apartment, me holding a bottle of wine, him scrolling his phone, and I was doing that polite girlfriend thing, where you rehearse small talk in your head so you don't say the wrong thing later. Before I could knock, he stopped short, turned to me, and said it. "Don't talk tonight. You'll make me look bad." There was no smile, no joke, just irritation, like I'd already messed something up. I laughed at first because I honestly thought he was kidding. He wasn't. He rolled his eyes and added, "I'm serious. Just be chill. Don't say anything weird." Something about the word weird landed harder than it should have. I asked what that meant, and he sighed like I'd asked him to explain basic math. "You over-explain things. You interrupt. I don't want to babysit you tonight." That should have been the moment I pushed back. Instead, I nodded. I didn't want to fight on the doorstep, and honestly, I was tired. Tired of being told I embarrassed him just by speaking like a normal person. So I made a decision right there. Fine, I won't talk. We walked in, and from that moment on, I barely said a word. I smiled, I nodded. I answered direct questions with one-word responses. I stayed near the snack table and kept my mouth shut exactly like he asked. He, meanwhile, was in full performance mode. Loud laugh, hand on people's arms, stories I'd heard a dozen times told like they were brand new. Every now and then, he'd glance over at me. I couldn't tell if he was checking to make sure I was behaving or making sure I stayed invisible. At one point, someone asked how long we'd been together. He answered for me. "A while," he said, and changed the subject. I told myself it was fine, temporary, just get through the night. No one else seemed to notice anything was off. Or maybe they did and didn't care. People drifted past me grabbing drinks, commenting on the music, the food, the view from the balcony. A couple of coworkers tried to pull me into a conversation about work. I answered politely, briefly, then let it die. Every time I opened my mouth, I could hear his voice from the doorway. "Don't talk, you'll make me look bad." He didn't come over once to check on me. Not a "you okay?" Not a look that said we were still on the same team. When he did look my way, it was sharp, assessing, like damage control. At one point, his friend Lauren handed me a beer and said, "You're really quiet tonight." I smiled and said, "Yeah." She waited for more. I didn't give it. She glanced across the room at him, laughing too hard at something unfunny, and her face flickered like she'd just connected a dot she didn't like. About an hour in, he brushed past me toward the kitchen. I stepped aside so I wouldn't bump into him. He leaned in and hissed, "Why are you being so weird?" That almost made me laugh. I kept my voice low. "I'm doing what you asked." He scoffed. "I didn't mean be a statue. You're being awkward." I shrugged. I genuinely didn't know what the right answer was supposed to be anymore. If I spoke, I embarrassed him. If I didn't, I was awkward. There was no version of me that fit whatever image he wanted to project that night. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. He didn't want me to behave. He wanted me to perform correctly. Quiet, but not too quiet. Present, but not noticeable. Girlfriend-shaped, without any edges. So I stayed quiet. I watched him tell a story about a recent work presentation, exaggerating his role, cutting out the part where I stayed up late helping him rehearse. I watched him accept compliments like they were owed. I watched him introduce me as Eddie instead of his girlfriend. By the 2-hour mark, people were tipsy. The music got louder. His mood shifted. He kept looking at me, not quick glances anymore, longer ones. Something was building, and I didn't know yet that he was about to completely lose it. The breakdown didn't start loud. It started petty. He came over and stood directly in front of me, blocking my view like he expected me to snap to attention. "Are you mad at me?" he asked, already defensive. I shook my head. "No." "Then why are you acting like this?" "I'm not acting," I said. "I'm just not talking like you asked." That was the wrong answer, and that's where everything began to fall apart. He laughed, sharp and humorless, then turned to the couple standing next to us and said, "See, this is what I deal with." Like I was a prop in a joke he'd rehearsed. They laughed awkwardly. I didn't. He crossed his arms and looked at me like he was daring me to fix it. "You're doing this on purpose," he said under his breath. "For once," I replied calmly. "I'm doing exactly what you wanted." His face flushed. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "God, you always do this. You make everything about you." That caught the attention of people nearby. I could feel the room tilt toward us. I stayed quiet. I wasn't freezing him out. I was standing where he'd put me. He snapped. "So you're just going to stand there and sulk all night? You think this makes you look mature. It makes you look like an—" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't roll my eyes. I just said, "I'm not sulking." He threw his hands up and said loudly, "Unbelievable. You come to my friend's party and embarrass me like this." Someone tried to step in, murmured, "Maybe let's—" But he cut them off. "No, it's fine," he said, projecting to the room. "She's just doing her thing, the silent treatment. Because apparently I'm the villain for asking her not to make everything weird." That's when it clicked. This wasn't about me talking too much or being awkward. This was about control. He wanted me responsive when he wanted, invisible when he didn't, and grateful either way. I finally said one thing, just one. "You told me not to talk." The room went quiet. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. His eyes filled instantly, not with sadness, but with humiliation and rage. "I can't believe you'd throw that back at me," he said, voice shaking. "Wow. Just wow." He turned to his friends, voice cracking theatrically. "I try so hard with her, and this is what I get." Then he started crying, loud, shaking, accusing me of ignoring him, of punishing him, of making him look crazy in front of everyone. I stood there silent again, realizing something terrifyingly calm. This relationship wasn't fragile, it was already broken. People rushed in like a fire alarm had gone off. Lauren put an arm around him. Someone handed him a napkin. Another friend shot me a look like I'd kicked a puppy. He sobbed harder, gasping between words. "She does this all the time," he cried. "She shuts down and makes me feel insane. He knows it hurts me, and he does it anyway." That was news to me. Lauren looked over at me, eyebrows raised, waiting for an explanation. I opened my mouth, then stopped. I could already hear how it would sound. Defensive, petty, like I was backtracking. So I said nothing. That somehow made it worse. "See," he said, pointing at me without looking. "She won't even deny it." Lauren sighed and said, "Eddie, maybe you should apologize. This isn't the time." Apologize for what? For listening, for being quiet, for not reading his mind correctly. I felt detached, like I was watching myself from across the room. The music kept playing. Someone laughed near the balcony. Life kept going. He pulled away from Lauren and stepped toward me again, eyes red, mascara starting to smear. "Say something," he demanded. "Anything. Do you even care?" I met his eyes. "I do." "Then why are you humiliating me?" There it was again. Humiliating him, not us, not the situation. Me as a prop in his image. "I'm not trying to," I said quietly. "I'm just tired." "Tired," he snapped. "You think I'm not tired. I have to manage you everywhere we go. Manage me." Something settled in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. "I didn't realize I was that much work," I said. He froze for a split second. Then the performance snapped back. "Wow," he said loudly. "So now you're playing the victim." He turned away dramatically. "I can't do this tonight. I just wanted one normal evening." He grabbed his coat and stormed toward the door, telling everyone he needed air. 2 friends followed him immediately. I was left alone by the snack table, holding a warm beer I didn't remember opening. A guy I barely knew leaned over and said, "Rough night." I nodded. Inside, something had already ended. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. I stayed another 10 minutes after he left. Not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what the right move was anymore. People avoided me. Conversations shifted away when I got too close. I caught fragments. Couples fight. He's really sensitive. She could have handled it better. No one asked what he'd said to me at the door. No one asked what I'd been told to do. Eventually, I grabbed my jacket and headed out. He was sitting on the front steps when I opened the door, arms wrapped around himself, phone in hand. He looked up like he'd been waiting the whole time. Relief flashed across his face, then irritation. "So you finally decided to come check on me." I stood there. "I figured you wanted space." He laughed bitterly. Unbelievable. I'm crying outside and you're inside, making everyone think you're the calm, reasonable one. I didn't say anything to anyone. That's the problem, he snapped. You let me look crazy. That sentence hit harder than anything else that night. I didn't make you do anything, I said carefully. You told me not to talk. Oh my God, you're still on that, he snapped, standing up. I said that so you wouldn't embarrass me. Not so you'd punish me. Punish him by being quiet. I wasn't trying to punish you, I said. I was just done walking on eggshells. His face hardened instantly. So now I'm the bad guy. I didn't answer right away. A car passed at the end of the street, headlights washing over the steps for a second. I noticed how calm I felt. That scared me more than the fight. I don't think you like me very much, I said finally. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. That's insane. If I didn't like you, I wouldn't put up with you. Put up with me. There it was again, the framing of me as a liability he tolerated. I nodded slowly. That's kind of my point. His voice rose. So you're just going to abandon me after humiliating me in front of everyone? I didn't humiliate you, I said. I disappeared and you couldn't handle that. He opened his mouth to fire back, then stopped. For a split second, something flickered across his face. Uncertainty. Like he'd realized something about himself he didn't like. Then he doubled down. You're selfish, he said flatly. You always have been. I didn't argue. I just said, I'm going to go home. For the first time all night, he didn't follow. The apartment was dark when I got there. He hadn't beaten me back, which felt intentional, like he wanted me to sit with it. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and stood in the kitchen longer than necessary, staring at the sink. I replayed the night in my head, not to find what I did wrong, but to see if there was any version where I won. I couldn't find one. My phone buzzed. His name. So you're really not going to apologize? I didn't respond. A minute later, everyone thinks you were being cruel. That almost pulled me back into explaining, defending, smoothing things over. That old reflex to fix it. Instead, I put my phone face down and sat on the couch. I realized this wasn't the first time he'd rewritten a situation, so I was the villain. It was just the first time I didn't play my part. I thought about other nights. Dinners where he'd kick me under the table for talking too much. Car rides where he'd tell me I sounded dumb in front of his friends. Parties where he'd summarize my opinions for me because I'd say it wrong. I thought that was compromise. Around midnight, the door slammed. He walked in like he was entering a courtroom, coat still on, bag thrown onto the chair. He didn't look at me. You good now, he said. Got it out of your system. I stayed seated. I'm not mad. That's even worse, he snapped. You don't even care. I do, I said. I just don't think this is healthy anymore. He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. Wow. So you humiliate me, ignore me, and now you're dumping me. I didn't dump you. Then what is this? He demanded. Some power play? I shook my head. No. I just realized I'm constantly adjusting myself so you don't feel embarrassed by me, and I don't think I can keep doing that. His eyes narrowed. So you're saying this is my fault. I'm saying I don't recognize myself anymore. That landed. I could tell. His anger flickered, replaced by panic. You're overreacting, he said quickly. This was one bad night. But I knew better, because I wasn't upset. I was done. He paced, opened and closed cabinets, took his phone into the bathroom, then came out quieter, like he'd said something to someone that didn't land the way he wanted. Around 2 a.m, he sat across from me on the couch, knees pulled up, voice suddenly small. I don't understand why you're being like this. You're acting like I'm some monster. I stared at the paused TV screen. I'm not acting. Yes, you are, he said quickly. You're doing that calm thing, that detached thing. It's manipulative. That almost made me smile, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. Anytime I didn't react the way he expected, it became manipulation. I'm just being honest, I said. For once. He shook his head. You always do this when I need you to show up. You disappear. I finally turned to him. You told me to disappear. He winced. I didn't mean it like that. I know, I said. You meant you wanted control without responsibility. Silence stretched. He stood up abruptly. So what? You're perfect now. You never do anything wrong. I do plenty wrong, I said. I just don't think this one's on me. The tone changed then, colder. If you walk away from this, everyone's going to know what kind of person you are. There it was, fear of losing the story. I'm okay with that, I said. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me, and maybe he didn't, because the version of me that bent and apologized was gone. He laughed quietly, like he was trying to convince himself more than me. You're really going to throw this away over one sentence? I shook my head. No, I'm finally listening to what that sentence meant. He didn't respond. He went into the bedroom and shut the door with a firmness that felt deliberate, like he wanted the click to land as a warning. I stayed on the couch, oddly peaceful, realizing this wasn't a fight anymore. It was an ending, and endings don't need permission. Morning came quietly, too quietly. He didn't come out of the bedroom until almost noon. By then I'd showered, made coffee, and sat at the table scrolling without reading. When he finally appeared, his eyes were puffy but dry, like the crying phase had already been converted into strategy. He poured himself coffee and asked, "So what are you telling people?" I looked up. "About what?" "About last night," he said, "because I've already had 3 texts asking if I'm okay." Of course he had. "I'm not telling anyone anything," I said. "It's not my story to manage." He scoffed. "Wow. You really don't care how this makes me look." There it was again. The optics. Always the optics. "I care how we treat each other," I said, "and last night wasn't okay." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and said it again like repetition would make it true. "You humiliated me in front of my friends." I shook my head slowly. "You humiliated yourself by needing me to disappear." His jaw tightened. "So you're sticking with that narrative." "It's not a narrative," I said. "It's what happened." He laughed without humor. "You know what? Fine. If you're done, just say it. Don't drag this out so you can feel morally superior." That line told me everything. He didn't want repair. He wanted closure on his terms. "I think we should take space," I said. "Real space." His eyes widened. "You mean break up? I mean stop pretending this is working." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded sharply. "Okay, if that's how you want to do this." He didn't argue. He didn't ask me to stay. He didn't say he loved me. He went into the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. That's when it hit me. He wasn't scared of losing me. He was scared of losing control of the story. He packed fast, like he'd rehearsed it. Clothes folded tight, chargers yanked from outlets, toiletries dumped without care. He narrated while he packed, like a witness statement. "I just hope you're happy," he said, "blowing up a good relationship because you couldn't handle a little feedback." I leaned against the doorway, calm in a way that felt almost unsettling. "It wasn't feedback," I said. "It was contempt." He froze for half a second, then scoffed. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said. "I finally learned the difference." He hauled the suitcase into the living room and stopped, scanning the space like he was taking inventory. The couch, the photos, the plants he'd insisted on arranging himself. "So what, you're just done?" he asked. "Not sad. Testing?" "I think I've been done longer than I realized," I said. "I just didn't say it out loud." His face tightened. "Everyone warned me about dating someone like you." I almost asked what that meant. Almost. I already knew. "I'm going to stay with Lauren for a few days," he said. "Don't text me unless it's important." I nodded. Okay, that response threw him. He lingered by the door, keys in hand, waiting for something that didn't come. "You're really not going to fight for this," he said flatly. "I fought by shrinking," I said. "I'm not doing that anymore." He opened the door hard. "You'll regret this. Maybe, but not today." When the door closed, the apartment felt bigger, quieter, like I could finally breathe. I sat back down on the couch and realized something simple and irreversible. Silence only hurts when you're still trying to be heard. I wasn't anymore. It's been a week since that night, and the quiet hasn't gone away. It settled in instead, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, just honest. He never came back for the rest of his things. 2 days later, Lauren texted me to ask when she could pick them up. She came while I was at work. Efficient, polite, no note, no message, just absence delivered neatly in boxes. It felt very on brand. I did hear from him once, a text at 1:14 a.m. "I hope you know how much you hurt me." I stared at it for a long time, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood that anything I said would be folded into a story where I was the villain and he was the misunderstood hero. So I didn't reply. That was the moment I knew something in me had changed. I've replayed that sentence at the door more times than I can count. "Don't talk tonight. You'll make me look bad." At the time, I thought it was just stress or nerves or him being picky about impressions. Now I hear it clearly for what it was. It wasn't about the party. It wasn't about his coworkers. It was about how he saw me. Not as a partner, not as someone on his side, but as a liability, a risk to be managed so his image stayed intact. And the strangest part is that When I actually did what he asked, when I really went quiet, he fell apart. Because I wasn't supposed to mean it. I was supposed to stay small but still orbit him. Silent but still available. Invisible but still useful. When I stepped out of that role completely, there was nothing left holding us together. I don't hate him. I'm not angry. I'm clear. Clear that love doesn't sound like warnings whispered at doorways. Clear that respect doesn't require rehearsing your personality. Clear that anyone who's afraid of you making them look bad has already decided you're beneath them. So yes, I ignored my boyfriend for 3 hours and he had a breakdown. But the truth is, I stopped ignoring myself first. And once you do that, there's no going back.